Hello, everybody. So Michael Saylor just tweeted thinking about buying more Bitcoin. So here's a video about just that, buying more Bitcoin. Let's discuss the state of strategy right now. So first of all, we celebrate the outperformance of strategy over IBIT, i.e. over Bitcoin. Strategy is doing better than Bitcoin. There is a significant outperformance of MSTR over IBIT over the past 5 days. Remember, this asset is supposed to be roughly 1.5 times. Like historic volatility is roughly 40% for Bitcoin, 60% for strategy. That's what we've seen most often, roughly 1.5x. We should be down 12.5%. We should not be down just 9%. And as a result of that, MNAV is actually increasing back up. You may remember early last week, we were at 1.04, 1.05 MNAV. We're now 1.07. So that means issuing the common is just a tad more accretive. Still nothing to write home about, but still accretive. And so we don't complain as long-term holders of strategy who understand how the math of the common ATM works. So that's point number one. Point number two is Bitcoin was hurt again by a president of the United States tweet on tariff. 2 times. And the problem with these tweets on tariffs is we can't predict them. And so that leads to a lot of liquidations. And crypto is the most liquid market. It's the market that's open after hours. It's the market that's international, that impacts everywhere, that is impacted by everything everywhere. And we've noticed it right back in the day with 1010, right? That was another tweet. So we know that Bitcoin is particularly sensitive for some reason to tweets about tariffs or to some higher level macro stuff. It's very, very sensitive to that. Go figure, because it's got nothing to do with tariffs. Bitcoin is not a tangible good. Anyways, the market makes no sense. Bitcoin is still seen as a very risk-on asset, and whenever you have uncertainty, people sell it, risk off. And so that disproportionately affects assets that are correlated to Bitcoin. And so that would be strategy, right? 1.5x correlation, and then that would also impact stretch. Right? And of course, stretch, we had the longest streak. We had a good 2 weeks of stretch hitting past 100 and not being able to keep it down past 100. We had a good 2 weeks of that. But of course, the tariff tantrums brought stretch back down. Right now, we're fighting back to reclaim 100. The volatility, as Saylor has said many times for stretch, they may be able to get it down to 2 to 3% with a good market. But as long as we have these geopolitical tantrums or any form of macro fear, the stretch the preferred is not gonna. It's gonna decouple. It's gonna decouple from 100, and it's gonna keep happening. Periodically, maybe once every few weeks, this is gonna happen and keep happening. And so, what's the solution for that? Well, Saylor has told us before what he is working on. So let's look at the volatility. So you see Bitcoin volatility about 44%, MSTR volatility about 62% right now. Strike, for example, another preferred, 35%. Strike is one of my favorite prefers. I actually much prefer Strike over Stretch because Strike has an equity component to it, right? You can convert 10 shares of Strike to one share of strategy after strategy reaches $1,000 a share. So that you get that perpetual call option in Strike, which I love. But you can see Strike is way less volatile than either Bitcoin or MSTR, and you still get a lot of upside. Stretch down to 7% volatility. He wants that out. He said that in multiple interviews. So what is he working on? Most likely, in my view, what he's working on is a partnership with a bank to strip out some of the final volatility. You could also be working on a partnership with an exchange. This is not something I've considered, but he could be working on a partnership with, I don't know, like a Robinhood or a Coinbase. That could also be something, but more likely a partnership with some sort of financial institution that operates on TradFi rails. And he wants to create, in my view, an actual stable coin or a bank account. Perhaps he wouldn't call it a stable coin, like an actual bank account that yields something like a stretch, but a little lower than a stretch, but also does not drop a single penny, because the world is full of risk-averse people. The world is full of people who will not even tolerate losing a penny. And we know that's entirely irrational, but even losing a penny hurts. Losing 1% hurts. And actually, if you look at Brian Armstrong's presentation 2 days ago in Davos, he was talking about something like 4 billion people, for example, are unbrokered. We talk about the unbanked, but there's very few people that are unbanked compared to the number of people that are unbrokered. I thought that was pretty darn genius way to put it. So most people don't even have a brokerage account. They don't want a brokerage account. They have no interest in that. They just want a bank account and something that yields more than 0.1% or the 10 basis points that you get with a bank. So Saylor's working on that. And for to achieve that, to have a dollar that actually is always worth a dollar, but also yields very high, he needs to find a bank or a financial institution of some sort to provide support whenever, for example, Stretch decouples and trades at like 99.75 or 99.80 like it is now, not 100. So that risk, the risk of pennies drifting, right? Pennies off, a few pennies off. That risk needs to be taken on by an actual financial institution that has actual dollars on it. And so my guess is that he's working on an instrument, perhaps based on Stretch, perhaps based on some other mechanism, but an instrument that would be in partnership with a bank that would yield maybe 6 or 7%, and then the remaining 4 to 5% would be the payment to the bank for them to take on that risk and to absorb that volatility. So the bank would be rewarded handsomely doing that deal with Saylor, but Saylor would also win because Saylor would get people who don't even own brokerage accounts, would not even consider buying a stock. He would get them into the strategy ecosystem. And of course, these customers would win because getting someone to buy stocks who comes from families who don't even look at stocks, who know nothing about stocks, that's probably 100 hours worth of education. Telling someone a bank account that yields 7%, that's a 30-second elevator pitch. And that's what Saylor has said multiple times. It's like, it's very, very easy to sell a checking account that would yield 7%. That would be so easy to sell. 30 seconds pitch, elevator pitch, not even that, right? Not even that. And he said in interviews very clearly, that was during his UAE interviews, he said that it would be either offered by a New York bank or a UAE bank. Now, keep in mind, he was mentioning a UAE bank because at that time, he was in the UAE, and these were interviews that he did in the UAE. So, of course, it is good ingratiation tactic. It is a good tactic to flatter your host and say, yeah, it's going to be a UAE bank. In my view, he threw the UAE bank to flatter the host, right? In my view, he was more likely thinking about a USA bank. And sure enough, the many tweets that we've had of him and Fong Li in New York, I mean, there was a tweet of him at Morgan Stanley, a tweet of him at JP Morgan. They did 2 trips to New York that they tweeted. So that gives me pause, and that makes me think he's working on a deal with a major USA financial institution. And my wild card would be perhaps there could be something also done with a Robinhood or a Coinbase. Who knows? Because we know he already has a partnership with Coinbase. So maybe something like that could also happen. But more likely a TradFi bank. Because, I mean, Saylor has been a TradFi person his whole life, right? So that's also something, I mean, he's a newly Bitcoin person, but before that he was a TradFi person. So that's the next thing. He's discussed that many times. Another minor thing could be a stream in Europe, getting that to finally ATM or find a way to do an ATM. That could be another minor thing he's working on. He's also mentioned another minor thing maybe in Canada, maybe talking about a Canada instrument. But to me, these are the smaller stories. The bigger story is to try to create that checking account that yields 7% based off of Stretch. That's what I think is coming next. Either way, why is today's tweet significant? Well, today's tweet is significant because he's tweeting, thinking about buying more Bitcoin after Monday's announcement, where he announced a mind-boggling buy, which was a top 5 buy for Saylor, one of his biggest buy in the history of the company at 2.13 billion. So that's why this is significant. It's like you just buy one of the hugest bags that you've ever bought in the history of the company. Not quite, but as the CEO of Metaplanet commented, he bought nearly Metaplanet's entire bag. He bought that in one swoop, one buy. One buy is nearly Metaplanet's entire bag. So think about that, right? He bought 2 clean sparks worth of Bitcoin in one buy, and then he's tweeting this. So this is why this is a significant announcement, and this is why it's trending. And of course, I'm curious to see how much he's actually buying next week. Maybe he's using the common ATM, and I'm fine with that. I think that's a great idea. So, because I'm not a short-term holder, I'm a very long-term holder. MSTR is a stock that I want to own until the 2030s and beyond. So anyways, just what I do here, just sharing what I do. This was not investment advice, not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon, follow me on X, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.